I've been waiting for so long to play that. That is, of course, the Colonel Bogey March from a certain movie that we will be talking about momentarily. So,
So that is so martial. So,
and the lyrics, which there are lyrics, are even funnier. You can look them up online. They reference the Nazi leadership's virility. Let's just leave it at that. Since Halloween, and in the less than 3 weeks now since the Harvey Weinstein thing broke, James Toback and a whole bunch of other people, 200 plus women with James Toback.
Which first that was an opening bid of 38 women. It opened at 38 women with him.
Yeah.
James Toback, whom I've interviewed several times. I think, whom you
Bugsy Junket, man.
and all of that. And I don't know. I don't want to again say, well, sure, I knew about all of that. So I don't think that was the kind of open secret that Harvey was.
Yeah, no, not the same as Harvey. I mean, the Toback stuff kind of came out of the blue. Everybody knew that Toback fancied himself a womanizer in his younger days because his first film was The Pickup Artist, which was autobiographical or semi-autobiographical. So, he was already bragging about his proclivities with that movie. But I don't think anybody did you read the thing that just broke most recently with Selma Blair and Rachel McAdams, who both had? I mean, the Selma Blair, both of them, they both are like, wow, really? Seriously? Like Selma Blair, he said, I don't think you. Or he allegedly, let's keep it there. He allegedly said, I don't think you're. You need to get over your insecurities. You need to do this audition without your clothes on. Come on, man. If that's true, those days are over.
I believe it, but I do think a lot of these guys are in fact stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Those days are in fact over. Have been over for a long time. So a lot of these guys that we're looking at now. These are fairly old guys, older than me and you.
Oh yeah.
When we first hit this town, almost 30 years ago, and you and Bridget got into the acting games, these guys were around behaving this way then, and well before, sometimes as much as a decade before.
Yeah.
And it's like they didn't get the memo.
I know.
And which is interesting to me that, and look, I'm sure that some younger men mostly will probably ultimately, but mostly we're talking about men of a certain age. And I got to tell you, I'm glad that age is just a notch older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's and the entire European Parliament. Let's not forget about them.
Yeah.
Because it actually has spread overseas and into other fields of endeavor. It's just a mess that won't stop.
Yes, indeed, and we had a bunch of emails about the Harvey thing too, which we will obviously consolidate and discuss on a future show. I think this thing is it's all far from over.
Well, we're going into awards seasons, which means that some very specific considerations are going to have to start coming up. About people and people's movies and producers and who's associated with what and whether or not people should be rewarded and whether or not other people should be punished because of something that someone who worked on a movie that they why am I punishing Benedict Cumberbatch? Because Harvey has a movie coming out with Benedict. And I don't know, maybe that movie sucks. It doesn't really, and even that, I haven't seen that movie yet.
Yeah.
But I know that when I go to see that movie, as objective a human being as I am, I'm going to be thinking to myself, Harvey. Benedict. Harvey. And, and it's already not fair.
It's not. It's tough. Anyway, it is going to be an interesting award season. And the thing I'm most curious about is how things are going to change over the next few years. Amazon's a player now. Netflix wants to be a player.
$8 billion.
It's going to change everything. What are the Oscars going to look like in 5 years? I think it could be a whole different thing. And this year's the beginning of the end of that. So,
well, look, you and I were just talking about this right before we began the show today, right? We're movie people.
Yep.
Theatrical movie people. That's what we like. It's what we do. But then again, on the other hand, you and I are, we're television people. Yeah. You and I are the actual original children of television.
Yeah.
And I think both of us can admit that a good deal of what we're watching today that's very, very, very good is stuff that's either literally on television or coming from some streaming service. And frankly, a lot of younger people that I know, that's where they get all their media. I'm teaching a class right now. The university where you used to teach.
Yep. At Mount St. Mary's.
Mount St. Mary's University, and these young women engage media completely and totally differently. My youngest student is 17 years old. I think my oldest student is maybe 25 years old, and they simply aren't engaging media the way you and I did. And I don't see them trundling off to the movie every week the way you and I did.
The way that we did. I know.
It's
all changed. The behavior. They don't go to restaurants as much.
No.
It's a whole different behavior. It's all switching up, and it'll someday switch back again. I'm on the record as saying I think movie palaces will come back someday. They will.
Everything else has.
Yeah. The day will come when you have a generation that realizes that people used to, dress up and go and see big event movies in great big, Rococo palaces that, had all kinds of weird Art Deco furnishings, and, you had a lounge and you could sit, and they're going to think, wait a minute, I go to the theater and it kind of sucks. It's sort of generic. I want a movie palace again. And some smart person will say, here it is.
Yeah, and the content will have to be suitable.
Yeah,
which doesn't necessarily mean action film with superhero.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the content might be like the kind you're holding.
We'll get to this in just a moment, and this will be the.
That's the kind of movie that folks would have dressed up to go see.
Exactly, and of course the intro from the show speaks to it. So, Bridge on the River Kwai, the 1957 Academy Award winner for Best Picture, won 7 of its 8 Academy Award nominations. The only one, a little bit of trivia, do you know which one of its 8 nominations it did not win?
No.
Best Supporting Actor for Sisue Hayakawa.
Ah.
Who was a student of my father's.
Yeah.
When he was, and it's funny, my father, of course, in an earlier life, long before I was born, taught people who had been in the silence how to speak for the talkies. He did all of that stuff from us Singing in the Rain, I can't stand him, all that stuff. I can't stand him. So, and Sisue Hayakawa had been a huge silent film star. People don't realize that. You think, racism and, sort of the 1920s and, especially how people felt about Asians in America, that it was, they're the other and there weren't large Asian populations here and, then the war comes around. I mean, there was a lot of validity to that. However, Sisue Hayakawa was, Charlie Chan, right? Never played by an Asian actor, but no. Sisue Hayakawa, he was something of an exception. He was a real matinee idol. I mean, he was a big deal in the 1920s. And then when talkies came around, it's the thing from The Artist, right? Which you find out at the end with that accent, and you can't speak English. Okay, suddenly now you're expected to talk. So he was my father. He was when he was still a very young man. He was a student of my father's. I still have a signed picture. When he's very slender face, but he of course did many other fine films. Got a little bit typecast and stereotyped for obvious reasons. But boy, I'll tell you, Bridge on the River Kwai, he just kills it. He's fantastic. He holds his own with Alec Guinness in a beautiful way, and got an Oscar nomination for it. But he was the only one to not get an award.
Extraordinary. Jack Hawkins, David Lean, of course.
Yeah.
And so what is this particular edition?
The Kwai is now out on 4K. Now this is a big deal. This is a really, really big deal because a lot of studios and Sony and Universal, chief among them, they're still not apparently convinced that 4K is going to be a mainstream format. The feeling is that not a lot of people are jumping up to 4K Blu-ray. They're getting their 4K TVs, but mainly for sports and gaming and other things, and that the whole idea of getting a 4K Blu-ray player it's not being adopted as robustly as was, say, DVD after VHS, or even Blu-ray to a somewhat lesser degree after DVD. So, and really, the reason is pretty obvious, which is there's a huge installed base of high-def televisions and of Blu-ray players, which give you really, really good quality. And unless you're above, 50 inches, you're probably not going to see a lot of a significant leap from regular Blu-ray to 4K. However, it is worth pointing out that some movies transcend that, and Bridge on the River Kwai is one of them. The reason this is such a big deal is because most of the movies being released on 4K these days are sort of newish movies, and the people are not really dipping into their libraries as yet, and they're especially not going after old Oscar winners, which they should be. When Lawrence of Arabia and Ben-Hur and The Sound of Music start making their 4K debuts, then we're through the looking glass, and it's a whole new game. However, the first ever Academy Award-winning Best Picture to be released on 4K just a few weeks ago was Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood film. Bridge on the River Kwai is the second. Very interesting. So that's where we are now.
Perhaps a bit of a commitment after all.
Yeah. So I do applaud Sony for putting this out there. It is thin. Now, this is the other thing. It is thin on the extras, as is the case with 4K Ultra HD releases. The disc itself is pretty well slammed just putting the movie on. So you're always going to get that second disc, which has all the extras. And here you have a second disc that contains a Blu-ray version of the movie along with some extras. Crossing the Bridge, which is a picture and graphics track, is on disc 2. William Holden and Alec Guinness make an appearance on the Steve Allen Show to promote it. And there's an archival audio recording of William Holden narrating the movie at its premiere. And all of that is fine and well. The first disc, the 4K disc, is the movie only. The big question a lot of people have, and I will say this, it's a really, really good 4K transfer. It's a really good 4K transfer. My impression of comparing it with the Blu-ray is that it's the same 4K transfer. So they mastered it in 4K for the original Blu-ray, and then just pulled out that master and slapped it on here without not obviously needing less compression. Right. So there's not a lot of skin off of Sony's back to actually do this.
But you see all the same artifacts are there.
And there's no artifacting per se. I mean, it's 4K. It just looks gorgeous. But the color is the same. The timing is the same. The timing's a little bit off in some places, and that's the thing that's a little bit annoying. The film has a lot of day for night, there's a lot of day for night stuff when he's being, when Guinness is being marched off to the hot box. That's day for night, and the day for night stuff isn't quite timed right. Wasn't done the first time. Hopefully, at some point in the future, they'll kick in the cash and go through, and you don't need to remaster the thing. You just need to color correct it, and you're good. So hopefully that gets fixed. It's not enough to annoy anybody unless you're a complete anal retentive lunatic like I am and you've seen this movie 1,000 times. But it's still there. So it seems to be the same transfer. And the HDR looks gorgeous. Everything about it is fantastic. I would highly recommend this as a double dip. However, the previous Bridge on the River Kwai, the Blu-ray, was one of those gorgeous Warner Brothers Blu-ray books. With the color and the pictures and the booklet and the content. There's more stuff. It's a more collectible thing. So don't get rid of the Blu-ray. Hang on to that Blu-ray.
Yeah, because you got all of that, even though you got a Blu-ray on this too. Yeah.
But hang on to that because it's a nice collector set and you're going to want to thumb through those pages.
I love that graphic design too.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a cool new graphic design on the cover. It's cool. It's kind of it's a little bit of the Richard,
almost like a rotoscopy sort of.
It's a little bit like the Waking Life book. Yeah. So anyway, Bridge on the River Kwai 60th anniversary release. Is 7-time Academy Award winner, the first film that David Lean won an Oscar for. He would go on to win another one with Lawrence of Arabia just 5 years later. And this is from the great heyday. Important to note, too, this was written by Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson, a blacklisted writer who received his credit posthumously He also received a posthumous credit for Lawrence of Arabia, which I don't believe he deserves, but nonetheless, interestingly, this adapted from a novel by Pierre Boulle, who wrote Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes,
that source material. And a lot of other fun stories about this movie.
They were both blacklisted, right? Both
Foreman and Wilson,
okay.
yeah. For whatever reason, though, Wilson his name was kept off for many, many years. So there it is.
Interesting. What do I got? I got Kenji Fukasaku's The Green Slime from the Warner Archive collection.
Yeah.
You know what I like most about this movie? Aside from the fact that it has a giant one-eyed green slime monster in it, which is great, is that Richard Jekyll is in it. I love Richard Jekyll. He's one of those '70s television guys.
One of the '70s guys who always played bad guys.
Yeah, with the hair, and he eventually he could do it. He was always fantastic. Loved him. This is 1968. It's about an asteroid that's hurtling toward Earth, and these astronauts who are on a space station go off over to the asteroid to blow it up. Man, they redid that story 50 times at least over the course of the next 30 or 40 years. But it's always a neat story. In any case, they get back to the space station. They figure out that the slimy thing has an eye and it goes all crazy. It's kind of neat. Invaders from Mars. The film is The Green Slime, 1968. Kenji. There's absolutely nothing on this. Warner. I guess they don't do that, huh?
They do sometimes. There's a few on some of these others.
This was rated G back in the day.
Isn't that funny?
Which I think is sort of interesting too. Yeah.
Also from the Warner Archive collection, a couple of cool ones here. Jack London's The Sea Wolf, the Jack London novel. The Sea Wolf was, back in the day when Jack London was a huge thing. This is from 1941. Was made as a movie with Edward G. Robinson and Ida Lupino and John Garfield. It's a pretty good film. Michael Curtiz directed this. He was right in his Casablanca era. And I'm not a huge fan of Jack London's novels to begin with. They just all kind of strike me as. Well, he's like sort of the North American Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah, with the dogs and the wolves
it's just it's all adventure and not much else. However,
he uses the word wolf a lot too.
Edward G. Robinson is very good in this. It's not a typical part for him, playing a crusty old sea captain, but he's good. Ida Lupino, I just always adore, even if she's miscast like she is here. So. Anyway, this is a restored length of this. The film has not been seen in its original length for quite some time. They restored it to its proper running time as opposed to the truncated running time that it had for a long time. So it's now 100 minutes as opposed to 86 and completely beautifully restored from original nitrate elements. It is a gorgeous Warner Archive transfer. So again, I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but I do like this particular transfer of it. Also, I am a big fan of Brigadoon.
Oh, yes.
Love Brigadoon. Early Lerner and Loewe film with Sid Charisse and Gene Kelly and Van Johnson tagging along, looking very much like a third wheel. Produced by Arthur Freed, who exposed himself to a 12-year-old Shirley Temple. You know that story's been circulating a lot more lately with Harvey Weinstein. That's the famous story, is that Shirley Temple and her mom went for a meeting on the MGM lot. Shirley Temple was, I guess, 12 years older than, was she even 12? She was maybe not, like 11, I think. And not that it matters, and Arthur Freed took her into one room while her mom went into Louis B. Mayer's office. And while Arthur Freed exposed himself to Shirley Temple, who proceeded to laugh at him, Louis B. Mayer was chasing her mom around the desk.
Hollywood.
True stuff. It's like, wow, man. Anyway, so Arthur Freed produced this, Vincent Minnelli directed, and it is a wonderful film about a couple of guys that happen across that Scottish village that comes alive once a century or whatever it is, and for just one day. One day, and then he gets a one-day romance with Sid Charisse, and they do a lot of great dancing, and people do that little sword dance. And if you don't know the movie or how wonderful it is, how truly wonderful it is, and how brilliantly colorful it is, and its fantastic cinemascope that the Warner Archive people have beautifully preserved, then at least watch Four Weddings and a Funeral, in which what's his name has that great line. Simon
Cowell.
When he says it's Brigadoon when everyone's dancing at the wedding. Yeah, it's fantastic. Simon Callow. So anyway, yes, Brigadoon on the Warner Archive collection, also fantastic.
Oh, wow. There's a wonderful episode of Lucy that uses the Brigadoon theme as a backdrop.
Oh, yeah.
The dragon and everything, or whatever. Silly. Waiting for Guffman. Believe it or not, Waiting for Guffman was 1996. That makes me a little bit dizzy. Came out in 97 anyway. Christopher Guest, absolutely fantastic film. Of course, that Christopher Guest stars in. He didn't star in a whole bunch of those films all the time, Christopher.
No.
But this one
directed him, but this is the one.
Writing is right, but he puts himself in this one and right at the center of it, and it's absolutely fantastic. About a small town in Missouri who learns that a Broadway, who think that a Broadway
so fun
producer is coming to town and go all crazy. Eugene Levy, one of the co-writer on this, and Fred Willard and Catherine O'Hara, and just the whole dadgum.
It's the whole team, the whole troupe.
Exactly. Just all there together, and the band is really, really hot. It's just an absolutely wonderful movie. This is from the Warner Archive collection as well. A couple of special features, which include an audio commentary track with Christopher and Eugene Levy, and a few additional scenes. And theatrical trailers, stuff like that. Not it's not packed, not jam packed or anything, but frankly, I would mostly put this in and turn on that commentary track and sit back and just have a hoot and hear what these guys have to say. That's what I would do with that.
And I should tease too. We do have another interview today, but it relates to one of the movies that's going to be mentioned today. Kind of relates to it. So we'll wait till we get there. Also, Warner Archive. A couple other Warner Archive titles here. One is a regular DVD-R. It's not a Blu-ray, with Lucille Ball, very early Lucille Ball performance in Beauty for the Asking, which is a really interesting 1939 film, kind of a really an overlooked RKO picture from the year, because in 1939, it was like the greatest year ever. Like the top 50 films were all classics.
Wizard of Oz,
and Gone with the Wind, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Gunga Din. I mean, it's just endless. You just go down the line of all the films from that year. But this is not a bad little thing to rediscover. Some actors in here that you've probably never heard of and will never hear of again, like Frida Inescort and Patrick Knowles. But this is actually quite a fun little, otherwise sort of negligible movie. Mainly because Lucille Ball plays, she's really great as this manicurist of all things. But it's a nice little minor rediscovery. Well, worth checking out.
Doris Anderson and Paul Jericho screenplay.
Yeah,
they can write.
Yeah, and then also, lastly, from Warner Archive is The Hidden. This is a movie that I find interesting. Winds up on the Warner Archive list because it's a more recent film. It's a New Line film. But it's it's sort of an orphan movie in many respects. It was a genre sensation on a cult level, but it never really kind of broke out at the time. And there's a commentary here with Jack Shoulder, the director, and Tim Hunter, and a special effects production footage thing here that he also narrates, and then a trailer. So there are a few extras on here. But I remember really enjoying this movie. This was the kind of movie you went to see at the theater. I went to see this movie
for sure.
Back
in the day. Michael Nouri, Claudia Christian. That whole sequence when it's about an alien that comes here, and the alien is running amok, and then there's an alien hunter.
Yeah,
and the alien
Kyle MacLachlan basically kind of doing an early version of Agent Cooper.
In many respects. And Claudia Christian, for a while anyway, is the alien, and she's crazy hot, and she's driving a Maserati or whatever. And it's just it's a pretty neat movie. And Michael Nouri trying to figure out what the hell's going on. He's this cop, who's trying to figure out what's going on.
It's a real kind of a science fiction noir thing.
Yeah.
And it's, in many respects, it's a little bit like that. What's the Scarlett Johansson movie of a few years ago?
What do we think?
Where she's the alien.
Scarlett Johansson. I don't know what movie we're talking
about.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Anyway, it's got a kind of a vibe like that. It's science fiction-y, noir-y. But anyway. Let's see what else.
I got Dawn of the Dead over here, which is only interesting. This is the 2004 Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder's. It's only interesting because we recently lost George.
Yeah.
And George's film Dawn of the Dead was 1978, which I always liked. I thought was a very worthy among his follow-ups to his original Night of the Living Dead. his Dawn of the Dead was very, very worthy. Zack Snyder's film, really good fun is what Ebert and Roper called it, and I think that's probably pretty damn true. What's mostly neat about this is all the special features on it. And you just handed me Land
of the Dead, which is coming out with it.
Cool. And so these things are just jam-packed. I mean, so you love the movies, that's great. You love the movies, you're going to enjoy these. But what you're really going to be getting here are just two jammed-packed collector's editions that have everything you can possibly think of on disc 1 and disc 2, 2 discs in each one of these things. So that's what you want to be picking these up for.
What are your feelings about the Zack Snyder? I mean, everyone knows how I feel about Zack Snyder. So
well,
there's no point.
I feel the same way about Zack that you feel about it. Well, look, the thing that I've always said about Zack, when it comes to his filmmaking, is that he has an imprimatur, and he puts it on everything.
Yeah.
But it's familiar and it's not interesting. He's the reverse, for instance, of J.J. Abrams. We talk about him too, who has no imprimatur whatsoever. But basically, he's water, and so he makes a Star Trek film. He makes a film that looks like a Spielberg film, and
he's what you want if you want somebody to sort of rejuvenate something old without making it look too distinctive.
Keeping it familiar. Yeah. Zack, though, he takes that Superman film and he makes it look just like the 300, which is true. Amazing.
As I've said many times, everything in a Zack Snyder movie is wet and metallic, and that's just it.
In a vignette.
Pose and look wet and look metallic, and that's all he needs out of you. So Twilight Time has pretty good set this month. All of it available at either screenarchives.com or twilighttimemovies.com. Remember, these are limited releases, only 3,000 units apiece, so once they're gone, they're gone. Sometimes they re-release this stuff, but not that often. So these Twilight Time titles are wonderful collectible Blu-rays, mined typically from Studio Archives, so they get special licensing deals on some of these, which were released previously perhaps on a DVD. But the four this time, and boy, I'll tell you, next month is a real barn burner. It's great. The four this time include a really interesting, often forgotten Michael Caine movie called Play Dirty. This is from 1968, Michael Caine's heyday, and
I'll say.
Yeah, right. He owned the 1960s.
You get Carter and
so
Alfie,
good. Man Who Would Be King with
Sean Connery.
He and Connery were just fantastic in that film. Anyway, like all of these, all the Twilight Time releases, it has an isolated music and effects track, which is really, really fun. This is a pretty solid adventure film directed by Andre de Toth. And this is allegedly, and I have not had a chance to really, really research this because it says this is Andre de Toth's final film. Although I think de Toth may have done one more film that may not have been released. I'd have to look into it. But anyway, this is a North African World War II movie. Just combat. Back when everybody just wanted to make adventure movies and blow stuff up, and it's a lot of fun. And there's just nothing better than having a movie where everything blows up and Michael Caine's in the middle of it. It's just a lot of fun. Same cinematographer as The Dirty Dozen, and it's a really fun film. It's just Andre de Toth was a real good workman-like director, and Michael Caine just has so much fun and stuff blows up and there's guns and Nazis and it's great. It's Play Dirty. There is also The Pirates of Blood River, which I have not seen in quite a long time, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot again, because the last time I saw this, it was on television at about midnight or something, and I remember thinking, that's not a very good movie. And you know what, I still don't think it's a very good movie, but I actually was able to sort of hang on to some of the performances in it, which are actually quite enjoyable. It's, you've got Oliver Reed shows up in here, and Christopher Lee, of course, is is chewing the scenery, and I can kind of hang with that. But it is otherwise just a kind of one of those twisted. It's all about the Huguenots, and it's one of those really, really stretching history kind of movies. A little bit better is Captain from Castille, which was made in 1947. Really, really beautifully shot. Henry King directed period film. From the 20th Century Fox period when they were doing a lot of these big epics based on a novel. And really noteworthy mainly as a star vehicle for Tyrone Power, another student of my father's, as long as I'm dropping names. This is all about, it was Cesar Romero plays Cortez. That's all you need to know. Cesar Romero is Cortez. He plays it with as much relish as he did the Joker. And, we've kind of seen this whole routine before, this kind of period piece where they make everything look, they take a period of history, an event, a particular place and time that's, should be really gritty, and they romanticize the daylights out of it. And that's what they did in the 1940s. That's what people expected. So Cesar Romero is Cortez, and Tyrone Power plays the sort of a guy who becomes a part of the Spanish expedition on, under Cortez. And the most interesting part of this, significantly, is that Jay Silverheels, most famous for playing Tonto, actually has a part here as an Aztec slave, which I thought was interesting. I'd never seen Jay Silverheels in anything else. The first time I had seen this, I didn't even realize that he was the guy. So it occurred to me. And then lastly, a movie that has a real curious reputation, Wild Bill, with Jeff Bridges and Ellen Barkin.
I got to tell you, I'm one of the few, and if you dig around out there, you can find my review of that movie. Yeah. I like that movie. I'm the outlier on that, and on Kevin Costner, Lawrence Kasdan's Wyatt Earp.
I was just going to compare the two, so I'm glad you did it first.
Yeah, I think that those, because there were several of these movies. Tombstone was the other Wyatt Earp movie. The Kurt Russell
of that period. Yeah.
Of that period. Yeah. And there were a couple of other significant westerns. You talked about Unforgiven at the top of the show. And this was one of them among that run, maybe a 20-year run altogether, maybe 15, 20 years, that starts with probably Unforgiven. Silverado was in there.
Dances with Wolves might be the beginning.
Dances with Wolves might be right there at the top.
Silverado's a little bit before that, but yeah.
And I got to tell you, that one, this movie did not, particularly Jeff Bridges' performance in this movie, which begins his run as the sort of crusty cowboy that he's been doing for a while.
Which he's still doing.
Yeah.
Frankly. Yeah. If you saw the latest Kingsman, that's exactly what he's doing. Jeff Bridges has been chewing tobacco without actually chewing tobacco for about the last 7 or 8 years. And all his parts, he's kind of got a little something between his cheek and gum.
He had the smartest thing to say. He had the smartest thing to say about Harvey. You quoted him for me.
Yeah, he said he's facing his demons right now, and I hope he leans into his demons and comes out a better person.
Yeah.
That's a really amazingly gracious thing to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jeff Bridges, I agree, is really good in this. And I think this film really got kind of piled on a little. If it had been directed by anyone other than Walter Hill, I think it might have gotten a little more respect. But Walter Hill's never gotten a lot of respect as a director.
And he's made about 3 solid Last Man Standing.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis adaptation of Yojimbo, I think.
Yeah.
In this movie, and he had one recently that wasn't very good.
But I love 48 Hours.
48 Hours. Right?
I love Streets of Fire.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of great Walter Hill movies. I'll even defend The Driver and The Warriors, which are there's a lot of good Walter Hill stuff from the period. Well, he's clearly aspiring to something richer here. Now then the Zanucks produced this, Richard Zanuck and Lily Feeney Zanuck. It's got a lot of great production value. And full disclosure, the cinematographer for this film and for most recent Walter Hill films is Lloyd Ahern, who is a very, very good friend. In fact, where we're sitting right now, I can almost see his house. Seriously, it's like right there. And Lloyd's a very, very good friend, and I've known him for many, many years. Lloyd, started as a clapper boy because his dad was the cinematographer for Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh, wow.
So he came up, in the system. And one of the interesting things about Wild Bill is that there are flashbacks in here which were shot on videotape. And you can tell it's very video. It's very black and white, desaturated. It's a real video to film look, like in a really archaic way. They're not trying to hide the video. They're sort of owning the video. And it's a period film. And, it's a Western. And there's this video look that's very, very jarring. And yet at the same time, it totally works.
Yeah.
And it was probably about 2-3 years ago that I was actually talking to Lloyd, and I asked him, and I said, that was, I need to ask you about the Wild Bill, the video thing. What that was such a really daring stylistic choice, because 1995, there's no high def.
Mm-hmm.
You're just totally going video, like not even black and white film. And he said, yeah, that was Walter's idea, and he thought that it would give it a style. It would let it be something. It would let it live in a universe all its own, right? You know, because once that happens, you're like, okay, this is not a regular Western. This is not a new Western. This is not a revisionist Western. This world, this is its own. It just creates a universe of its own, and it totally works. It was a daring thing to do, and I give it all the credit in the world.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Oh, I got Calamity Jane, best Calamity Jane, Ellen Barkin in that movie. It was popping into my head. The other thing that I loved about that movie, and that's what it is. Yep, it was Ellen Barkin's Calamity Jane.
Totally, she was fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
What do I got? I got some horror, not horror, but I guess sci-fi over here. 1940, 1 million BC.
Yeah.
The Victor Mature 1 million BC. You know, aside from the fact that this film is, in terms of science, completely and totally historically incorrect. Humans of various different sorts with dinosaurs of various different sorts. Okay, we'll let it go. But what the heck? Victor Mature, Carol Landis, Lon Chaney Jr., Conrad Nagel, of course, directed by Hal Roach and Hal Roach Jr. You know, this film is a lot of fun and spawned a whole lot of other films. At the top of that, you know, in 1940, as we made that run through the war years and up into the 50s, these sorts of films would come to be the sort of regular films that we would be going to see for the next several years, and this one's a whole lot of fun. This is a Blu-ray with not a whole lot on it, Wade. Yeah, commentary track by a couple of film experts, but not much more than that.
And on that all similar front, you got another one that you wanted to
I was gonna toss over Lucy.
Yeah.
Lucy.
Ball?
Scarlett Johansson. We were talking about it a minute ago.
Was it Lucy?
Was it Lucy?
No, it's not Lucy.
It's not Lucy. Well, whatever. Anyway,
I'll pull it up.
I'll talk about Topper while you're looking at that. 1937 Topper. Constant Bennett and Cary Grant. This was such a macabre movie to me. I mean, they die. And they come back as ghosts, and they haunt this house, and they help this guy, and I don't know. It's sophisticated in a certain sort of way.
Under the skin.
Oh, yes.
Right? That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Jonathan Glazer.
Yeah. Excellent. Anyway, so this was a lot of fun. Very light Cary Grant film, Topper, with Burt Young and Billy Burke. A lot of fun.
The Devil's Rain on Blu-ray from Severin. So The Devil's Rain, if you've never seen it, is a 1975 horror exploitation film that is so absolutely wonderfully campy. You've got to see it. This is like somebody made my dream list of people that I would have wanted to see in an exploitation film. If this had been released in 1968, it would have been even better. By 1975, the genre is starting to run a little thin, but it's like somebody made my dream list. Like they went and they got Robert Fuest, who directed The Abominable Dr. Phibes, right, which is one of the better exploitation films. And then here's who they pack into the cast. Not just the aforementioned Ida Lupino, who I absolutely adore. Oh no. Not just Eddie Albert. Oh no. Not just a young John Travolta and a Tom Skerritt. Oh no. They get Keenan Wynn, who of course, Dr. Strangelove, you're going to have to answer the Coca-Cola company. They get Ernest Borgnine.
Ah, yes.
Oh, Ernest Borgnine as a satanic priest. It's the best thing in the world.
Marty.
And even better, the Shat.
Oh,
William Shatner.
Yes,
William Shatner is in The Devil's Rain, and this thing is just absolutely to die for. This is one of the most enjoyable drive-in schlock horror films you will ever see in your life. It is absolutely a stone cold riot. It's a whole satanic priest, Church of Satan thing. You don't need to know anything more about that. It is absolutely a stone cold riot. It is so much fun. And Severin just pulls out all the stops. The transfer is really colorful, very pristine, really, really rich colors. Much better audio than this film has ever had in any other format. I'm sure most people probably saw this, in a drive-in with a little tiny speaker next to your window and a very tinny. No. This thing, It's actually got pretty good audio, and it's an awful lot of fun. So you got to check it out. The Devil's Reign is just an exploitation classic. Highly, highly recommended. Superman, the movie, is now out on a very strange double feature as well from Warner Brothers. This is extremely unusual. So the original theatrical cut of Superman,
Christopher Reeve,
still
the best Superman,
far and away the best.
People argue about the Batman movies.
Yeah.
And whatever, I can actually see that. Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan, etc. But you know what? Far and away, Superman, Christopher Reeves, 1978.
Yeah, and my favorite Superman poster is of him in Superman 3 holding Richard Pryor in his arms.
By the time we get to the Richard Pryor, then we got some. But that movie in the second one, of course. But yes. What do we have here? What is this wacky DVD?
So this is really a bit of an unusual thing. So the movie released in 1978 theatrically, at a running time of about 143 minutes. And there is also a 151-minute version, about 7-8 minutes worth of additional material that constitutes the special edition. And then there is also a 188-minute television cut, which is called the extended cut. The original version of this is not here. The original 143-minute theatrical cut is not here. This is the special edition with the extra 8 minutes, 7-8 minutes. And then it has the 3-hour television cut on a single 2-film Blu-ray. I'm not quite sure. I mean, if you're a super Superman fan and you are a real completist and you want to have every single version of this ever, that's fine. I don't find that this is either one of these are really all that impressive. The special edition director's cut is fine. It's it's still not better than the 78 cut. There's nothing particularly amazing about it. It's it's fine. It's got some bits. And then I don't really know that we need 3 hours of Superman, to be honest.
No. Not even the good Superman.
Yeah, that I don't know that we need that. It reminds me a little bit of the Halloween television cut that has kind of a cult following. There's an extra cut that has all these additional stuff, and completists just anyway. So that's out there. It's a curious double feature, but there it is. So Warner Brothers is feeding the fans even more Superman cuts.
Yeah.
Real quickly, a thing called Dudes. This is an old Penelope Spheris film. Collector's edition with John Cryer and Daniel Roebuck. I had totally forgotten this existed. There was they called it a punk rock western. This is from the Shout Select line. Has all new material on it too. Shout has most of the Shout Select stuff are things that I really genuinely remember very fondly. I don't remember this very fondly. It's a really peculiar kind of a genre splitting weird experiment.
I remember Flea was in it.
Yeah,
from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, right?
Yeah, yes, and and it's just odd. It's a strange movie. The only thing I remember positively about it is that Catherine Mary Stewart is in it, who I was a really big fan of at the time from Last Starfighter and Comet. I really enjoyed her work at the time. I'm sad that she sort of vanished, but there's like an Elvis impersonator. It's one of those odd. Kind of goes along with Repo Man a little bit. One of those, there were these weird genre-splitting movies from the 80s that you just kind of scratch your head. But anyway, has a bit of a cult following, I guess. John Cryer's good in it. This is about when Penelope Spheris decided to go much more mainstream, and for understandable reasons. Anyway, so this Blu-ray DVD combo set, collector's edition of Dudes from Shout Select, has a bunch of features on it, new interviews with Penelope Spheris and a lot of the other people involved in the film, including Catherine Mary Stewart, theatrical trailer, and a featurette on the making of the film.
I got a couple from the middle 80s as well here. 3 O'Clock High. I remember this movie. It's really weird. These movies... I saw these movies in the middle 80s when they came out. I went to the theater to see these movies. And I don't know, it's just sort of odd. Phil Jarneau movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Richard Christian.
That was Matheson. Finish it.
It's Casey Siemaszko and Annie Ryan, Richard Tyson, all of these guys when they were Casey and all of this stuff. And I remember this being a very popular movie It was kind of a neat movie. It's about this kid who at 3 o'clock he's going to have to fight this other kid, right?
Yeah.
And he's and the other kid's like this big. But you remember Richard Tyson, because Richard Tyson, he had sort of like a chest on him and some arms on him, and
that was before he did and then he did Red Shoe Diaries.
Yes, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And the thing that I liked about this movie is that it didn't walk down that same path, right? I mean, it seemed like an after-school special.
Right.
But there was actually this other layer of something kind of sophisticated going on in this movie. Both of these guys were outsiders. They were both kind of weirdos. And they had more in common and I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I was like that in high school. It was like that. That's what it was like. And anyway, 3 O'Clock High was one of those movies. There was a whole bunch of them in the middle ages. And one you just mentioned that, of course, we've got. That's when we would have had our, a Breakfast Club, all of that stuff. That stuff was happening. That was interesting. From in hindsight, these things all have sort of like a shape.
I remember very well Matt Reeves, director of Planet of the Apes movies. I remember when Matt was at USC. And I was acting in his little movies and thinking someday, Phil Joannou had just graduated from USC.
USC guy, yeah.
USC. I was at UCLA. Matt was USC, and Phil Joannou was like, he was Mr. Hot Stuff. Oh yeah, I just met with Spielberg, and I remember Matt telling me like, this guy, he's really kind of full of himself, He's and it's a funny thing now because everybody from that class behind him that he was, so he's not. What's Phil Joannou doing now?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would have to look. I mean, he had a career, Final Analysis, made some movies.
He made Rattle and Hum.
A couple of studio films and stuff like that. But no,
he's not the hot guy anymore. Well, hasn't been for 20 years.
He was always biting De Palma, who was biting Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So it's just this big bite. The other one is Slaughter High. Also, this is more of a horror film. Revenge kind of movie. Kid teased and horribly mutilated in high school, comes back for a high school reunion and decides to get revenge on all that. Audio commentary here from the directors, but again, this is another one of those movies from the middle '80s that came out and it sort of resonated and sits in my head right to this day. So interesting stuff here. Slaughter High and 3 O'Clock High.
We've got a couple of Criterions, really great Criterions. I don't even know where to begin. So here's where I'm going to begin. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me on Criterion. I hope this means that the entire David Lynch catalog is going to come out on Criterion now because it deserves it. I want my Blu-ray of Lost Highway. Can I just say that? My wife worked on the movie. I only have it on DVD. It's not on Blu-ray. It needs to be. Let's just get that out there. So Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which is the prequel movie that was made after the original series and that premiered at Cannes, and I was there that year at Cannes in 1992. And boy, I'll tell you, it brought the house down. This is a terrific movie, and you don't even have to be completely immersed in the Twin Peaks mythology of the series, the original series, to appreciate it. It's a real head trip, and it's a lot of fun. This includes everything that you could possibly want. They did a 4K digital transfer restoration. They maxed it out with 7.1 DTS audio, and this thing just blows the roof off.
And of course, we're coming off of maybe a month or so ago that the return Twin Peaks series. You do want to watch this if you are watching that.
Yes, you do.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's all. And I would also recommend you watch The Missing Pieces, which is an hour and a half of deleted and alternate stuff, because there are things that you learn from The Missing Pieces, the deleted stuff especially, that do kind of answer some questions. So it's not just your usual deleted scene stuff. This also has the 2014 interviews, new interviews with Sheryl Lee and Angelo Badalamenti, and excerpts from the Lynch on Lynch part of the 1997 book. So that is just a sensational release. And the other Criterion this week is a Kubrick film. And for my money, it's easily one of Kubrick's 3 best films. I go back and forth between, 2001 is always at the top, and then next is, Strangelove or Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon is one of the most beautifully photographed films of all time.
That's a film, the lenses.
They invented lenses for the film.
Yeah.
F1.
Yeah, so that he could shoot with that candlelight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and no one moves because they'll be out of focus.
Yeah,
that's why everyone in those candlelit scenes.
That's why they're also painterly.
Yeah, it's a magnificent film. Adapted from the unadaptable novel by William Makepeace Thackeray, which is who was a contemporary of many other great authors and whose books have not really been adapted into movies to any great extent. But boy, I'll tell you, this it's loaded and loaded and loaded. They even have an original 1980 interview with John Alcott, who won an Oscar for shooting this film very deservedly. There's even an essay from the 1976 issue of American Cinematographer among the extras. The thing with historian Christopher Frayling talking to Ken Adam, who was the production designer. I mean, this is literally a film school in a box. This is everything that Criterion needs to be. It's Barry Lyndon on Blu-ray. It just does not get better than this. Ryan O'Neal absolutely kills it, and he does it with an Irish accent. Who knew? Fantastic. Really, really, really good. One of Kubrick's very best.
Indeed. A young Ryan O'Neal. Ryan O'Neal was we forget because these years go by. Ryan O'Neal was a very good actor.
He really was.
As a young man.
Drama and comedy.
Yeah. He was actually very good. He and his daughter. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the original film. A lot of folks will forget that there was an original Buffy the Vampire Slayer film.
Yep.
1992, Fran Rubel-Kuzui directed this movie. Not just a lot of people. He wrote this theory. He created the character and wrote the film, and obviously the television series that came later with Sarah Michelle Gellar. The neat thing that I always liked about this movie, it wasn't a particularly big hit movie, so I was a little surprised that it became a big hit television series. But I love the way Christy Swanson. This is the 25th year anniversary edition, by the way, Blu-ray, digital HD Blu-ray. 25 years. I love the way Christy Swanson played Buffy. She plays Buffy completely different.
Totally.
She's a little surly. She's sharper than the Buffy on television.
She's sort of
less girly.
She owns it a little bit more.
Yeah.
She kind of like dips into it a little bit more.
She enjoys killing those vampires. Yes, it's like she's glad to do it, and it's not bothering her at all. Anyway, special features here include a featurette and a whole bunch of other stuff. Luke Perry, of course, was in this film. Paul Rubens, of course, is in this film. Rutger Hauer is in this film, which is just it's just pretty neat. So if you're a Buffy completist, you're probably going to want to go ahead and grab the Buffy the Vampire Slayer original 25th year anniversary edition release.
The Old Dark House is actually a comedy.
William Castle?
No, it isn't.
William Castle?
No, James Whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Old Dark House. I think William Castle remade this.
And I know he made one called The Old Dark House for sure. Yeah, but James Whale.
Yeah.
This is the original Frankenstein.
Yeah.
James Whale.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a James Whale film from the very, very early sound era, 1932, when he is really getting it going with Universal.
Oh yeah, the Castle film would have been like in the 60s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this is James Whale, early sound horror film, suspense horror film from 1932, which features the very, very first ever starring role for Boris Karloff, who basically plays the butler of this old dark house. And you realize very quickly where the idea of Lurch came from for the Addams Family. So yes, that is also a very, very Karloffian thing. It is. This is based on a novel that was published just a few years earlier called Benighted, and this is from the Cohen Film Collection, the good people at Cohen, for whom, full disclosure, both Tim and I have done audio commentaries. And this is one of the lesser known but better Universal horror films from the period. Everyone focuses on The Mummy and Frankenstein and Dracula and all the usual Universal monsters, but this is actually really amazing. The idea is about it's very Agatha Christie in a certain sense too. A bunch of people come upon an old dark house. And everything that transpires is, of course, both what you would expect and what you would not necessarily expect. It's beautifully shot, as everything that James Whale did, and really, really very interesting film. It's worth checking out. Cohen dipped deep into the archives over at Universal for this one, and what a great one! Really, really great.
Warrior. This movie, 2011,
such an odd movie.
I like this movie. It didn't do very well when it came out. Tom Hardy.
I still kind of struggle with it.
It reminded me in some ways of the old Matthew Modine film.
Yeah.
The wrestling film Vision Quest.
Yeah.
But anyway, basically it's about these two brothers. Tom Hardy is one, Joel Edgerton, the other one. Tom Hardy is this married guy. He's a high school teacher, high school wrestling coach or whatever, and and he's not making ends meet, and he starts sort of like wrestling in these underground wrestling things, which I guess exist. And then he has his brother who's an actual warrior. He was in the war. I forget which one of the many wars that we are fighting that he was in, but he's in one of the wars. And anyway, in a roundabout set of circumstances, he ends up pitted against his brother in a very important match of these two guys. And they have this alcoholic father played by Nick Nolte. And I got there's something about this movie that kind of got me. It's sort of like, it's a very manly, Gavin O'Connor, of course, very manly movie. But there's a certain amount of heart in it, and at the end of it, it's a story about these two brothers, and I don't know, I kind of dug it, and I think it's becoming something of a cult favorite. I've had a few people mention this movie to me, sort of like out of the blue, when we were talking about whether it was Rocky or the new Rocky or something like that, and The Fighter, and they would throw this movie in with those movies, and they were really sincere about it, and I kind of think I might agree with them about that. Anyway, this is a 4K Ultra HD 2-disc set, all kinds of stuff on it, from director Gavin O'Connor.
Strange movie to put out on 4K, isn't it?
Yeah, I would think so, because it's mostly in that ring, and in sort of little dark environs and fighting in alleys.
I'm just wondering what the thought process was.
It literally looks like that. This movie.
I'm just wondering what the thought process is, and you're thinking about what movies to get out there to the 4K early adopters. I'm wondering why they thought this would. Anyway,
as opposed to something with wide vistas and a great. Yeah.
Anyway. We've also got something that should be on 4K, frankly. 20th Century Fox, get on that. LA Confidential, 20th anniversary edition of LA Confidential from 20th Century Fox. There's a tongue twister. I love LA Confidential. I absolutely love this movie.
Yeah.
We
lost Curtis not too long ago, I think.
I know. It's so sad. Great kind of modern classic noir set during the original noir period, written by Brian Helgeland and Curtis Hanson, directed by Curtis Hanson, produced by Arnon Milchan, all based on the great James Ellroy novel. Dante Spinotti. I mean, everybody involved in this is just really just killing it. They're all working at the peak talent. And the thing that's amazing about LA Confidential is this film in 1997 ran the table and won the LA Film Critics, National Board of Review, New York Film Critics, the National Society of Film Critics. It swept all of those awards. First film since Schindler's List to sweep all the critics' awards and then go on to actually lose the Academy Award to Titanic. Yeah. So sad.
Kim Basinger finally got hers, though.
She did.
That was good.
But a ton of extras on here. Commentary with Andrew Sarris, James Ellroy, Russell Crowe, Kevin Spacey, Guy Pearce, James Cromwell, everybody. It's just on and on and on and on. Everybody's in on this commentary. It's really a terrific commentary, given that it's edited together from all that stuff. Lots of featurettes. It's just, there's a music-only track. It's just wonderful. If you love this movie, this is the only way to have it. Get rid of that earlier Blu-ray and grab that one. Speaking of Titanic, we're going to talk about but carry on.
I'll knock these off real quick. Dreamgirls.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx, Beyonce Knowles, and Eddie Murphy, who should have won.
Gosh, he was so good in
that
this.
Academy Award that year. It is still my feeling that he was nominated.
Yeah.
That him not winning that Academy Award that year sort of broke Eddie.
I think it did.
He hasn't been the same since. He hasn't been the same in comedy. He did that drama, Mr. Church, but it's just like he said, all right, then the hell with it.
Yeah, I think he's so good in this. I mean, so unbelievably good. You realize what a great dramatic actor he can be. It's a really layered performance.
James Early Thunder. He says the combination of sort of like a James Brownie, sort of a Bobby Womack, sort of amalgamation of these guys. Yeah. He does all his performances himself. Eddie, he's singing in that movie just like Beyonce and everybody else. What are you going to do? Anyway, Bill Condon, a very good movie that I like a lot. This has a whole bunch of stuff on it, including a photo book and some extended alternate scenes in the director's extended edition, which is on this, and never before seen audition footage from a very young Jennifer Hudson, a younger and much heavier Jennifer Hudson. She never put that weight back on. Way to go, Jen. Yeah.
Yep. Vice versa from the body switching year of Big, and then there was the one with Dudley Moore. And, horrible.
Yeah, a couple of Jamie Lee Curtis switched up with I think who was the little girl that went crazy.
Yeah,
and everything. Yeah.
Anyway, this was the year of all the body switching movies, and one of them was Vice Versa with Judge Reinhold and Fred Savage. A young Fred Savage.
Liked it. I'm sorry. I liked it. I
liked
it. I did. I'm sorry.
Oh, dear.
They're all ridiculous, but I liked it.
Judge Reinhold just acting like a little kid and Fred Savage trying to act like an adult. I don't know.
The thing of it is, Judge Reinhold, back then anyway, he had that face.
Yeah.
He looked like a little kid.
Yeah.
He looked like in a man body.
Yes, he did.
And he was like pulling that thing. Anyway, whatever. And now Fred Savage is older.
Blu-ray.
Fred Savage is older now than Judge Reinhold was when he made that movie.
Very true.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Again, from the middle 80s, 1987.
Yeah.
This is just, I don't know, it's just a time for that. Celebrating its 30th anniversary. That's what this is for. Blu-ray, DVD. The late John Candy, the great Steve Martin, and the late John Hughes' Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. The thing about this movie that, again, I like the most. As funny as it is, and it is funny. These two guys at the top of their game.
Yep.
It is so poignant. This movie is so ridiculously funny, and then at the end, it deigns to break your heart.
Yes.
And I'm like, you know what, John Hughes, you win, baby. You win. He did that for his whole career.
I know.
He could do it. He could just do it whenever he wanted to. He could just make it so goofy, and then he'd just break you right in half.
But give John Candy props for being able to be a clown through this whole thing. And there's a crucial moment at the end of this where he looks into the camera. It's a point of view shot from the point of view of Steve Martin, and John Candy looks right up into the camera, and he makes you cry.
Oh my goodness! It's like a giant, like a baby polar bear or a baby seal or something.
It's amazing.
It's like there, and you just
it's a moment.
And and after wreaking all of the mayhem that he wreaks in this movie, because he's the one wreaking the mayhem. Anyway, this thing is just packed full of all kinds of neat stuff.
I just love this.
Special features, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
You know what? Yep. Let me tell you something. My wife has never seen this movie.
Okay, well, actually,
this Thanksgiving,
surprise me.
We're going to do a double feature. She doesn't know this yet, but we are going to watch. And, my daughter will be, it's okay. There's some language here that's not appropriate. She'll be fine. She doesn't know those words yet. We're going to watch Home for the Holidays.
Yeah.
You have to see this. Your father's organ. He can't keep his hands off it. And we're going to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. We're going to watch this, pretty much the only two Thanksgiving movies in existence, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Tyler Perry, make a Thanksgiving Medea movie. Just saying. Just saying. Don't do Boo 3. Do a Thanksgiving one. Medea and a turkey. That's all I need to say.
Malcolm D. Lee.
There you go. So we're going to wrap up this show of classic titles. We're going to talk about a bunch of Kinos on Blu-ray, and then the last one of them is going to dovetail into our interview. And the first of these is from the F.W. Murnau restoration operation in Germany, and this is the German version of Titanic, otherwise known as Titanic. I can say that because I'm half German. This was actually made. This was a Nazi-approved Goebbels deal from 1943, made during the war, mind you. And so you watch this, understanding that Americans and Brits in this are the bad guys.
Yeah, the bad guys. Yeah.
You just got to know that going in. But as a historical artifact, it's very interesting. It's quite a good film. Probably a good reason why the tide turned against Germany in 1943, because they put all their money into this movie and not into munitions. But
they should have got Lenny. They should have got Lenny to direct it.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting film, directed by Herbert Selpin. Never heard of him. I don't know anybody involved in this. I don't really know anybody who's in it. But it's what's interesting is that the director of this film actually committed suicide during the making of the film. And another guy finished the film named Werner Klingler, but he doesn't get credit for it. In any case, it's a fascinating backstory on all this stuff. There's an audio commentary that you have to listen to by Galen Studlar, who's the co-editor of Titanic: Anatomy of a Blockbuster. And you got to listen to the commentary. The movie is almost meaningless without the commentary. It's really an interesting Blu-ray. We've also got from the Kino Classics line the Mario Bava collection entry, Roy Colt and Winchester Jack. I've always found Mario Bava's westerns to be a little bit of a curiosity. Bava is, of course, a giallo filmmaker, and primarily, and this 1970 western is a little bit weird because it's a spaghetti western made by a giallo guy. And it's kind of also a satire and a spoof, even though sometimes it feels like it's not. And in that sense, I can only really compare this to From Dusk Till Dawn, which sort of tries to do the same thing a little bit. And I can see that Tarantino probably borrowed a few things from this anyway. So it is. It's a worthwhile curiosity, I would say. Roy Colt and Winchester Jack. Yeah, it's worth checking out. And then here's the big pile from the Studio Classics line. This is what they came up with this month from mining the archives of 20th Century Fox and other studios. Billy Wilder's Avanti with Jack Lemmon and Juliette Mills from 1972. Late stage Billy Wilder, starting to strain a little bit. Not as good as his earlier classics from the 50s and 60s by any means, but he co-wrote it with I.L. Diamond, Izzy Diamond, and it still has, that Wilder spark. There's still a lot of fun stuff in it, a lot of really, really great moments with, funny kind of romantic comedy stuff. There are big spaces between. It's 140 minutes long, way too long for the story that it tells. But it's Avanti is still a fun film. If you're a Billy Wilder fan, you'll still enjoy it.
Clyde Revel.
Oh yeah,
he's funny.
The Indian Runner, which was Sean Penn's directing debut, is still a very good film too.
Quite auspicious,
right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Sean Penn has kind of become a lesser director as he's gone along. 1991. There's an interview with Sean Penn on here, along with an interview with Viggo Mortensen and David Morse. I do think this is a very, very good film, and I think that his you see his strengths as a director.
Whatever happened to Valerie Golino? She's in that movie.
Boy, that's a good question.
She was in that Patrice Leconte film.
Yeah.
I think the hairdresser's husband, maybe, or something.
It's a good question. Yeah. Young Doctors in Love, not a movie that I much cared for. This was Gary Marshall's first feature attempt moving out of television, and it's a mess. Produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, scored by Maurice Jarre. It's just weird. Everything is all wrong about this movie. Makes no sense at all. It's it's sort of a satire and a spoof of the medical soap opera genre. But it never really comes together. There's an audio commentary here with Pat Healy and Jim Healy, which is kind of a little bit insightful, but otherwise not much. I mean, Sean Young is kind of having her moment again because she came out of the woodworks to get digitized for the new Blade Runner.
But 2049. We haven't talked about that, have we?
No, not really. We'll do that on another show. George Papard in Canon for Cordoba. This is kind of a standard 1970 kind of semi-Peckinpah film. Everybody wanted to make things that looked like the Wild Bunch around that time, and it's understandable. So this all takes place during the 1912 Mexican Revolution. It's really just a lot of action and not much else. Directed by Paul Wendkos. It's an okay film. Canon for Cordoba. Much better is the actual Peckinpah film, Junior Bonner with Steve McQueen, which is a very underrated Peckinpah film from 1972. It's because it's not kind of a typical Peckinpah film. It's a great character study of a rodeo guy, and Steve McQueen is fantastic in it. He's really good. This is some of his best acting. Very, very constrained. Really good audio commentary by Paul Sedur and Garner Simmons and David Weddle, who've written about Peckinpah. I've met David Weddle, sat next to us at a LAFCA dinner once, the year that we gave the award to Jerry Lewis. And Nick Redman, who is one of the principals at Twilight Time, moderates it. So that's a really good audio commentary, and a lot of other fun stuff on here. a rodeo, a passion and poetry rodeo time featurette, and then a passion poetry Peckinpah anecdotes bit. Both of them together are feature length.
Hell of a cast. Robert Preston, Ida Lupino.
Oh, it's great.
Ben Johnson's in that movie. Joe Don Baker's in that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, in '72. They weren't well. Ida Lupino was kind of late. Ida Lupino, but everybody else was like, in their stride.
Portrait of Jennie with Jennifer Jones and Joseph Cotten is one of these great movies from the time of Laura, and a lot of movies that had kind of a ghosty, eerie, otherworldly kind of vibe to them. William Dieterle directed this. This is really one of the best movies of this period, a Selznick-produced movie, and highly, highly recommended. From 1948, really got to check it out. Joseph Cotton's just so good. Portrait of Jennie, Jennie. We got another Woody Allen movie, Take the Money and Run, which I absolutely adore.
Early Woody.
Woody.
Outrageously funny Woody. Bananas Woody.
There is nothing funnier in any Woody Allen movie than the gag in this. And yes, I'm going to give it away. So here's a spoiler. Can it for like 30, 40 seconds if you don't want to hear this. There's nothing funnier. First of all, the idea of Woody as a convict is just hysterical. But the idea of where he carves a bar of soap into a gun, covers it with shoe polish, walks in and actually uses it to get himself outside where it's raining and the gun foams in his hands and they take him back in. It's one of the funniest bits I have ever seen. That gun foaming in his hand is such a funny bit of comedy. It's absolutely amazing.
Because we don't always think about Woody Allen as a sort of visual comedian, but young Woody Allen was a very... visual comedian. He was a stand-up comedian, so he's a talking guy.
Yeah.
But Woody running around doing all those wacky things and all those visuals in movies like Everything You Want to Know About Sex.
Yeah.
Those Joel Schumacher and all the production design. That's visual comedy.
It's great. So that's no extras on this, but who needs them? Woody is an extra. Then we've got another Gary Marshall movie, Flamingo Kid on Blu-ray, which is welcome. I love the Flamingo Kid. I think that's a really sharp film.
Made Matt Dillon's career.
Made Matt Dillon's career. He is great in it, especially when he makes noises when he eats. Very funny bit. Richard Crenna, Hector Elizondo, obviously in every Gary Marshall movie.
I saw Hector yesterday in a very early episode of All in the Family.
Yeah.
He had so much hair.
Uh-huh.
He's in the elevator. The episode there in the elevator with the baby.
Sure.
The lady's his wife is having the baby. It was fantastic.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
It's great. That's Flamingo Kid is really good. It has an audio commentary with Pat Healy and Jim Healy as well. And then we've got a movie that I know Tim and I are both very fond of that got no love at the time, City of Industry.
Mm-hmm.
This is from 1997, John Irvin movie. The guy who did, Hamburger Hill and many other fine movies. Which Schwarzenegger film did he do? It was...
good question. I'm not
sure which one it was.
Oh,
anyway, one of those Schwarzenegger films from the time too. This is a really good, just solid crime noir. And it's got some great performances in it from Stephen Dorff and Timothy Hutton, but especially Harvey Keitel. Who's
Raw Deal.
That was the one. That's the one he did. Yeah.
Harvey Keitel is so good in this, though.
Like an Edgar G. Robinson kind of heavy. Yeah. It's great. This is sort of it's got interlocking characters, and it's really interesting how it spins its story. It's a very smart script, and I'm sad this film didn't do better at the time. This was one of the last of the Orion films before everything went completely south with that brand. Yeah. And then we're going to end the show leading into our interview. A few weeks ago, I had the chance to talk to Larry Cohen, and Larry Cohen, of course, legendary writer, director, filmmaker. There's a documentary that's making the rounds, which he and I are going to talk a little bit about on the interview, and that's all about his career, his crazy, wild, nutty career. And Larry Cohen was primarily at a certain point a white guy that made blaxploitation films.
Yep.
And when the time came for that genre to sort of make a nostalgic comeback, Fred Williamson, who was going to produce a get-together again that brought everybody back together, Pam Grier and Jim Brown and Paul Winfield and Ron O'Neill and Richard Roundtree, they were all going to get together again. And who did he call? Who did Fred Williamson call to direct that movie?
Larry Cohen.
He called Larry Cohen. because Larry Cohen is out of his mind, and probably
even that was 20 years ago. What's funny to me is this movie, Original Gangstas, was 20 years after the original black exploitation films, and this movie was now 20 years ago.
Crazy? Isn't that crazy? Yeah. That's just time flies. But this is a very fun film. This is the movie that brought Pam Grier back. There would be no Jackie Brown if not for Original Gangstas. And it sort of put her back on the map and showed that she still had chops, and she's a great actress. And everybody else is great in this, too. They're all terrific. It is just so much fun. If you love that genre like we do, it's great to see all these people together again in this movie, Original Gangstas. And, Larry Cohen, such a fascinating guy, does a good job. He's still got it. He also wrote Phone Booth,
Cellular Phone Booth. I mean,
So, without any further ado, here is the interview with Larry Cohen.
It is my enormous privilege, and I use that in every sense of the word, to be talking right now with Larry Cohen, a really legendary fixture in the independent film world, in the film world generally, who has been a huge influence on me and whose movies have just been such a treasured part of my upbringing. Larry, I thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We don't have nearly the time. I could talk to you for hours and make an enemy of you, I'm sure. Just all the questions that I have.
You already called me a fixture.
Let me. First of all, we're specifically talking to you with respect to a documentary, a long overdue documentary called King Cohen: The Wild World of filmmaker Larry Cohen, which is this incredibly long overdue look at your career. When you look, I mean, I'm sure you're like most filmmakers in the sense that you feel like you're probably still just getting started, and you don't really look at your career as being this enormous body of work. Am I correct in that?
No, I have an enormous body of work.
Okay.
I saw the picture up in Montreal where it ran at the Montreal Festival and won the Best Documentary Prize, and I hadn't seen it before, so I didn't know I had done all those things.
You really were an amazing kind of you came along at an amazing moment when exploitation films and studio films and all these different sort of upstart genres were vying for attention at a moment right after the studio system was kind of falling apart, and it was a bit of a free-for-all. And you were one of the gunslingers in that Wild West period, and you did just about everything. What was it that drove you? What really, when you chose a film, when you wrote a film, when you wanted to direct a film, what really were you operating on? Was it instinct, or was there something special that you were looking for?
I just wanted to be able to be in control of my own movies. I had started out in television and written a lot of TV and my own series several times. And then I got into movies and sold a lot of screenplays. But I was never happy with the outcome of the screenplays. I was happy with the money, but I wasn't happy with the pictures that they made. And so finally I decided the only way to stop complaining about things and do something about it was to make my own movies. And so I decided that's what I would do. But I only wanted to do it with the condition that I had complete control of the movie, everything, writing, directing, producing, editing, choosing the composer, everything. Even making the titles myself. So I went to the other extreme of from just selling the script to being in charge of every element of the picture, which I enjoyed doing. I felt it was much easier for me to do it that way, and I liked the final result.
You know, you started by making three, as a director at least, you started by making three films that are sort of legendary in the so-called blaxploitation genre, Bone, Black Caesar, and Hell Up in Harlem. And you were one of a handful of white directors who really, really made a mark in that genre, which is a fine line to walk at that point in time. Obviously, also there was stuff like Shaft, which was studio film. Talk a little bit about
Shaft was directed by a black director,
right? But it was a studio film, It was
Superfly.
Yeah,
they were the big hits at the time.
So talk about working in that genre and where there were these very racially charged films and being a white director who is trusted by a black cast and by other black artisans to sort of tell these stories. Was that ever an issue?
I never thought about it, frankly. I mean, and I never had any problem with any of the members of the cast or anybody associated with the pictures. All the black people were happy to have the job and were happy to be making a movie, and I never thought of them as anything but gangster movies, like James Cagney's films or Edward G. Robinson's films or Bogart's films. This was just, black actors playing the gangsters. And the fact we shot in Harlem, that was the perfect place for it because that's where it took place.
You know, it's interesting, too, because I remember very well when I last spoke to you at the original Gangstas junket in 1996. That was pretty much the same comment that everybody there, gave me at the time. They all just they were so thrilled to be working with you again, and it was such a great reunion, and there was a sense of camaraderie. And it made me think, this is really hearkening to a different era. We think of that era as being one of sort of racial and political division, but it seems like there was an awful lot of camaraderie on those movies and in that movement in particular, because I guess there wasn't a lot of studio interference. You were able to pretty much do what you wanted, all of you, artistically. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah, that's the way it was in all my movies. I didn't want to be involved with any executives or any supervisory personnel. If I was going to make the picture, they just have to get out of the way, just give me the money and go away and let me make the picture. And I would deliver it when it was finished. And that was it. Nobody saw dailies. Nobody made comments. Nobody gave me notes. I just went off and did my film, and nobody knew what I was doing till I was done with it.
Some of my favorite films of yours are the films that either straight up horror or kind of veer into the horror and the monster genre. It's Alive, such a classic, and then one of my favorites. I was in high school at the time, Q, The Winged Serpent, which I think prefigures so much of what we do today with all of the CGI and Jurassic Park and Dragon movies. And you were on the cutting edge. You made one before anybody else even dreamed of it, before technology really even said that we could think in those ways.
That was one of the last of the stop-motion photography films that that had been popular for years, but was kind of antiquated because along came CGI and you didn't need stop-motion anymore. But I enjoyed doing it with the guys, even though it was very slow going. It would take them a week to do 30 seconds worth of effects, and drove me crazy after a while waiting around because I could make a whole picture quicker than they could do the effects in 3 weeks. So it was a long wait, but we finally got what was worthwhile and put it in the picture. But I didn't envy that because that was one of the few areas that I couldn't do myself. I had to farm it out to people who were experts, and they just were the kind of people who could sit in a room and fool around with these models an inch at a time and go on and just deliver 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe a minute at a time to you, and you'd have to drive all the way out to Burbank to see it. And in those days, they couldn't even send it to you over the internet. So it was the slowest portion of the picture for me. I wanted to get on with it.
I think you also deserve so much credit for the things that you haven't directed, but that you wrote and conceived. And some of your work as a screenwriter is really, really, really extraordinary, and does not, in my opinion, get enough credit. I'm thinking particularly of something like the screenplay for I, the Jury, adapted from the Mickey Spillane, and Phone Booth in particular, which has such a fascinating history. Could you talk for just a moment specifically about Phone Booth? And I mean, that film was 25, 30 years in the making through various stages, from when it was originally going to be a thing for Hitchcock. Could you talk just a moment about that, because it's such an amazing story?
Well, it was only an idea for years. It was nothing more than that. And Hitch always wanted to do the thing in the phone booth because it was right up his alley, but we couldn't figure out how to do it, why the guy couldn't leave the phone booth. And then years later, it dawned on me that I already knew the answer. I had a sniper up on top of a building in New York, and God told me to. If I just took the sniper and introduced him to the phone booth, then we'd have a reason why the guy would be trapped in the phone booth. And once I had that worked out, it only took me actually over a weekend to write the whole script. I was up in Mexico on a vacation, and instead of going down to the beach where you couldn't go swimming anyway if you didn't want to drown, I stayed in the hotel room and wrote the script. So that didn't take long at all to do. It all came pouring out when the time came to do it. Once I had figured out the answer to the puzzle.
Well, I think it's a terrific film, and it's movie. There are often movies that sort of seem to be inventing a gimmick for the sake of a gimmick. But what's beautiful about Phone Booth is that it really does. It earns all of its claustrophobic credentials. It's especially now in the cell phone era where phone booths are disappearing. I think it's still just a terrific film, and Joel Schumacher did a great job directing, and Colin Farrell is perfect. And
I would have done better.
But
if I had directed, it would have been better. I would have shot it in New York City on 8th Avenue and 44th Street, and surrounded by traffic and police cars and ambulances and fire trucks and buses and taxis and thousands of people. I would have stolen most of it and created the feeling of tremendous claustrophobia of the guy trapped in the middle of the phone booth among thousands of people passing by. They didn't have that thousands of people passing by kind of feeling in the movie because they had to recreate New York City and downtown L.A. And so they missed out on that. And then I would have segued it from day to night so that he would have been in the phone booth and the police arrive, and then we could have closed down the streets in New York at night and shot that with searchlights and all kinds of.
Can we push for a remake? Because that sounds great.
Well, everything is remade eventually, so we're waiting around for it. I went to 20th Century Fox when we were making the picture, and I said, "Look, you're going to shoot this picture in a couple of weeks. It's going to be very low budget for you guys." And you're sending the script out to all these stars, One time Mel Gibson was interested in doing it and directing it, and then Will Smith, and then Jim Carrey, and everybody else wanted to be in it. Dustin Hoffman wanted to do the voice on the phone. Robin Williams wanted to do the voice on the phone. I said, as long as the picture's so low budget and everybody wants to be in it, why don't we make it 3 times? All the supporting actors will be the same, but the star will be different. So you just shoot the scene, and then another actor will come in and do the scene, and then the other star would come in and do the scene. You'll have 3 versions of the picture with 3 stars, and you'll put them all out in the distribution the same day. Audiences love nothing more than a contest, so they're all going to want to go see all 3 versions to see all 3 stars playing this phone booth scene. And it was a fabulous idea because it had never been done before and never has been done since.
No.
But they wouldn't go for it because they'd never heard of it before, and studio executives won't do anything that they haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So there's no effort to be original. Because if you're original, you have a chance of failure and responsibility. If you never take a chance, you can't fail. So that's what's wrong with the industry. Is everybody wants to do remakes, sequels, comic books. There's no originality. If you go to them with a project, first thing they want to know is, what's this like? And I say, it's not like anything. If it was like something, I wouldn't have written it. And they look at you with a blank stare. So what can you say?
Well, that's sadly true, and that's where I was going to kind of take this next, which is that your career really thrived at a time when you could do those things, and it seems that despite the fact that we have more tools available for independent filmmakers than ever today, and they're more affordable than ever, that we just don't get the same level of risk and originality that we got back in the heyday of the 70s when you were really pumping them out. Do you see?
Well, when I made my movies, there was a chance of theatrical distribution. At the beginning, there was no place else to go but theatrical, and later on maybe television. But there was no cable and there was no video stores, so you had to play the picture in theaters, and that's what I made them for, to be seen by audiences in theaters, and they could afford to advertise them in those days. But it got to be so expensive to release a movie. If you didn't spend $20-30 million on advertising, you didn't get any audience. And so it was like a poker game where they priced it so high you couldn't afford to sit down at the table and play anymore. And once they wouldn't play the movies in theaters, the magic went out of it for me. I wasn't interested really in making pictures for home video.
So, is there a chance that that we'll see you again, see your name up on the big screen? Anything that you might be able to do in this current environment that we can look forward to?
I got a package of thrillers with J.J. Abrams' company, Bad Robot, and it looks very close to getting it going. So if we do, we'll have 10 thrillers in the package. And then I got 7 more for the following season already written. I've got 17 scripts written for this series.
Oh, that's
great. So let's see what happens. I mean, it's a different way of being in show business, but it's a guarantee that the things will play and be seen, and you don't have to worry about going out and advertising and try to get theaters to play the movie, because these movies will all be seen on cable, probably on Cinemax or home video, and also on Netflix and Showtime. All those areas are possibles for this particular kind of series. So I know JJ, who has the hottest show on cable right now, which is, as you know, a very, very popular program, Westworld.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have no trouble getting this on the air.
Well, Larry, I wish you all the best on behalf of my colleagues and all of our listeners. You've given us all so much happiness, and we deeply appreciate everything that you've done in your incredibly storied career. We wish you all the best, and we will look forward to more great work in the future.
And if people want to see my films, right now they're available on cable, on the internet, on I think Netflix, or you can just go in there and you can say my name. In many cases, if you have the audio ability, you could say Larry Cohen. My picture comes up, and then comes up a list of 14 of my movies. They're all available. You can rent them, very reasonably priced. They can see every picture, almost every picture that I've made, and I particularly recommend The Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover. You'll see, particularly with all the politics that's going on now in the FBI and the president and all that stuff. You'll see all kinds of revelations about what went on in politics in the United States over the years, and the FBI's participation in the destruction of the Nixon administration. So it's right there for them, and all they got to do is punch in my name.
And, we talked about Coronet Blue some weeks ago on the podcast as well, which is one of your terrific television efforts, and I think that's now out on DVD, and that just holds up beautifully, too.
Well, Coronet Blue starts off with a guy being found floating in the river, and he's been shot, and he has amnesia. If this doesn't sound like The Bourne Identity to you, I don't know what. I'm sure that Robert Ludlum based The Bourne Identity on Coronet Blue. I would be.
I think you're probably spot on.
Yeah.
And you're also. I should tell you are also going to come up in conversation at an event that's being held on Saturday. It'll be a past event by the time this airs on the podcast, but on Saturday, my colleague Tim Cogshill and I are going to be talking at the Ace Theater in downtown LA after screening of Jackie Brown, which I think is Tarantino pays homage to you several times in that film. And
well, he told me that he hired Pam Grier after seeing her in Original Gangstas.
Yep.
And he went opening day to Original Gangstas at a black theater in Los Angeles. I said, well, why'd you go all the way over there? He said, I wanted to see it with the audience, which was intended for. And then right after that, he cast her in the lead. And
and she got an Oscar nomination as a result.
And I wish it had done more for her career, because she was a truly good actress, and she should have got more leading roles in A-class movies. But it didn't happen for her like it happened for some other actors who've been in Tarantino's movies. But she did get a lot of television work and cable work, but she deserved to be a movie star.
Yeah,
well, maybe there's always tomorrow, right?
Yep, absolutely. There's never any chances that the only chances are the ones that you don't take advantage of. So chances always there.
Thanks very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. We wish you all the best. We look forward to all the work that you have yet to come out.
And look forward to seeing the documentary. I think you'll get a big kick out of it.
Yes, we will, absolutely. The documentary is King Cohen, and I'm sure that's supposed to, I guess we should look forward to that coming out later this year, early next year.
It just won the festival up in Canada, and now they're playing it in London. The director's just leaving today for London for a screening, and then it's going to play in Spain, and it's playing in Portugal, and it's playing in Paris. I'm going down to see it in Texas, at Austin, Texas, at a big festival down there. So I'll be doing that next month.
Great. Well, stay busy, my friend. We will speak with you soon.
I sure hope that I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
We will. All right. Thank you, Larry. Bye-bye.
All right, that is it. Another week done. We will be back next week with a lot of new stuff, and hopefully not too many more accusers of James Toback and Harvey Weinstein. The numbers just keep going up and up and up.
I wouldn't count on it. I think we're going to be talking about that for a while.